First, a note of preface. This offering has been scheduled for quite a while and has been pushed back until today because of more pressing issues. Now we have a most pressing issue, the unholy slaughter of innocents in Paris on Friday night. Almost oddly, that makes this essay more urgent because one of the reasonable, if self-destructive reactions to a threat is the surrender of liberty in the frantic search for security. Recall that Hitler came to power via a free democratic election. Onward. One thing worth noting about reality is how stubborn it is. Denial doesn't change it. Wishing away the unpleasant parts doesn't disappear them. Little children cover their eyes and playing peekaboo, pretending they cannot see you. What is notable is that their momentary inability to see you causes them to believe you're actually not there. They fail to recognize the reality, the you that remains even when they don't see. Almost precisely 11 years ago, Reverend Davidson Lohr of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Austin, Texas, published an essay entitled Living Under Fascism. I urge you to click through on the written blog and read it, but I caution you to first be sure that you're brave enough to face reality. Your courage to look won't change reality. It will, however, change you. In his essay, Lohr quotes a scholarly political science work writing, in an essay coyly titled Fascism Anyone? You can click to download the PDF on my blog. Dr. Lawrence Britt, a political scientist, identifies social and political agendas common to fascist regimes. His comparisons of Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, Suharto, and Pinochet yielded this list of 14 identifying characteristics of fascism. See how familiar they sound. First, powerful and continuing nationalism. Fascist regimes tend to make constant use of patriotic mottos, slogans, symbols, songs, and other paraphernalia. Flags are seen everywhere, as are flag symbols on clothing and in public displays. 2. Disdain for the recognition of human rights. Because of fear of enemies and the need for security, the people in fascist regimes are persuaded that human rights can be ignored in certain cases because of need. The people tend to look the other way or even approve of torture, summary executions, assassinations, long incarcerations of prisoners, etc. Is this starting to seem familiar to you? Let's go to 3. Identification of enemies, scapegoats, as a unifying cause. The people are rallied into a unifying patriotic frenzy over the need to eliminate a perceived common threat or foe. Racial, ethnic or religious minorities, liberals, communists, socialists, terrorists, etc. 4. Supremacy of the military. Even when there are widespread domestic problems, the military is given a disproportionate amount of government funding, and the domestic agenda is neglected. Soldiers and military service are glamorized. 5. Rampant sexism. The governments of fascist nations tend to be almost exclusively male-dominated. Under fascist regimes, traditional gender roles are made more rigid. Opposition to abortion is high, as is homophobia and anti-gay legislation and national policy. 6. Controlled mass media. Sometimes the media are directly controlled by the government, but in other cases the media are indirectly controlled by government regulation or, get this now, sympathetic media spokespeople and executives. Censorship is especially in wartime. It's very common. Obsession with national security, that's 7. Fear is used as a motivational tool by the government over the masses. 8. Religion and government are intertwined. Watch this carefully now. Governments in fascist nations tend to use the most common religion in the nation as a tool to manipulate public opinion. Religious rhetoric and terminology is common from government leaders, even when the major tenets of the religion are diametrically opposed to the government's policies or actions. Got a lot of that going on now. 9. Corporate power is protected. Oh, this is a favorite one now. The industrial and business aristocracy of a fascist nation often are the ones who put the government leaders into power, creating a mutually beneficial business-government relationship and power elite. Think Citizens United. 10. Labor power is suppressed. Because the organizing power of labor is the only real threat to a fascist government, labor unions are either eliminated entirely or are severely suppressed. It's going on right now. 11. Disdain for intellectuals and the arts. Fascist nations tend to promote and tolerate open hostility to higher education and academia. It is not uncommon for professors and other academics to be censored or even arrested. Free expression in the arts is openly attacked, and governments often refuse to fund the arts. And we have rampant objection to anything intellectual going on right now in this country. 12. Obsession with crime and punishment. Under fascist regimes, the police are given almost limitless power to enforce laws. People are often willing to overlook police abuses and even forego civil liberties in the name of patriotism. There is often a national police force with virtually unlimited power in fascist nations. 13. Rampant cronyism and corruption. Fascist regimes almost always are governed by groups of friends and associates who appoint each other to government positions and use governmental power and authority to protect their friends from accountability. It is not uncommon in fascist regimes for national resources and even treasures to be appropriated or even outright stolen by government leaders. 14. Last one. Fraudulent elections. Sometimes elections in fascist nations are a complete sham. Other times elections are manipulated by smear campaigns against or even assassination of opposition candidates, use of legislation to control voting numbers or political district boundaries, think gerrymandering, and manipulation of the media. Fascist nations also typically use their judiciaries to manipulate or control elections. This list will be familiar to students of political science, but it should be familiar to students of religion as well, for much of it mirrors the social and political agenda of religious fundamentalisms worldwide. It is both accurate and helpful for us to understand fundamentalism as religious fascism and fascism as political fundamentalism. They both come from very primitive parts of us that have always been the default setting of our species: amity toward our in-group, enmity toward out-groups. Hierarchical deference to alpha male figures, a powerful identification with our territory, and so forth. It is that brutal default setting that all civilizations have tried to raise us above, but it is also always a fragile thing, civilization, and has to be achieved over and over and over again. That's the end of Britt's comments. Now consider his challenge. See how familiar these things sound. Has the creep of fascism by our political creeps given you the creeps? Not yet? Well, uncover your eyes, because pretending this scourge isn't here hasn't, doesn't, and won't make it go away. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. That's from Edmund Burke. This is my country, and yours, and it needs us to stand up and speak up. I'm Jack Altshuler.